Okay, welcome back to Combat Mission Cold War for the setup we have going on for the 2024-25 winter turn by turn. This is the Persian Predicament scenario. There's the backstory with the all the political events leading up to this in another video, which I'll link down below. The quick version is this is an airbase west of Bandar Abbas in southern Iran. This is part of the Straits of Hormuz over here. And the Soviets have invaded Iran and they've punched in across the border from Afghanistan, which they just invaded. And they're about to reach the airfield here to secure the Straits. But the US has managed to drop a battalion task force from the 82nd Airborne on the airfield, or just close to the airfield, just before things kick off. So we have a company of US Airborne, so US light infantry, who have done the drop, and they're reorging. We've got these little deployment zones, and the Russians are going to come in, or the Soviets rather, are going to come in from this direction here and see if they can't overrun the airfield in half an hour before US air power comes in and just fixes them. So, it's a little unconventional for the winter turn by turn because it's a scenario, so we're not picking forces here, it's all set out in advance. That has some advantages which are going to become obvious as we go. There are three objectives. We have Airbase West, Airbase North, and Airbase South down here. These are all worth, well, I can't remember which ones are which. Off the top of my head, Airbase North is worth 100 points, Airbase South is worth 50 points, and Airbase West is worth 25 points. That's not a reflection of their actual tactical value. If we were doing that, then there's a great big hill over here, and that would be the actual, objective, because if whoever controls that controls the airfield. But did try making that, and it was just too complicated, or the scenario got too big, and it kind of veered off the course I wanted it to take. The reason why they're random points is so that the idea is to get this scenario out to you guys, and you can play it. And when you submit your results, like we did last year, I'll get into that in a bit, I just need the front screen. So because the points values for the objectives can only add up in certain ways, I'm going to be able to tell who's holding which objectives just by looking at the front screen. So if you have 175 points, you got them all. If you have 100 points, you just got Airbase North. If you have 125 points, you got Airbase North and Airbase South. You get the idea. Because they're all different points values, I can work it out. So that's the idea. There's only 30 minutes on the clock, though, so it is a chunky map. I can't remember the exact dimensions, but it's what, about 3 kilometers across. Yeah, that's quite a long way. It's definitely a long way for the Americans because they're on foot. Which is why we've got these deployment zones out in front, and it's not a straight-up BT engagement. But anyway, we're going to go through the force and show what we've got. I'll do the names because we've got the Adopt a Pixeltruppen initiative working. I'll do the names in the first turn video. This is just for the setup. So we've got the core of the force is a light infantry company. So we have a HQ in a Jeep. You can totally airdrop these, and somehow they've had the time to repaint them. So we have a company HQ and a company fire support team. Then we have the rifle platoons. Each of these, we have HQ, FO, 2 M60 teams. No tripods for these, just the bipods, so they're in the LMG role. But, nice to have. And then we have 3 rifle squads. Each of these squads is 11 men. Is it? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11. Yes. The first two, squads 1 and 2, are the light type. So they don't have any machine guns. They don't have any specific anti-tank weapons. They've got some M72A3 Laws, and there's the M203s, but they do have HEDP. That's awesome. So they're quite limited against an armored opponent. And then the third squad is the heavy squad. They've got a Dragon, which is the wire-guided javelin we have at home kind of deal. That still only has a range of 1 kilometer. Actually, can I split the anti-tank team off? Yes, there we go. So yeah, 75 to 1,000 meters. Which, isn't that far, and there's only 3 missiles, and, so we got 3 of these platoons. That adds up to 9 dragons. 9 shots with the Dragon. There's definitely more than 9 Soviet vehicles coming our way. So that's the bulk of the company. I've put as the default start a platoon in each of these deployment zones. You can move them between these. These aren't restricted in any way, so we can just shuffle them back over here. No problem. I don't know why I'm showing you this here, because I'm in the editor and I can do whatever I want with them. But trust me, you can shuffle them across. So if you want to be the forward rally points, or hang around at the rear one, that's entirely up to you, depending on which objectives you want to make a grab for. That is also another point. These deployment zones are more rally points than, hey, this is where we landed. I didn't want to have... The map is so big, and when we get down here, it's pretty damn open for the most part. So scattering all the teams and squads across the airfield like they've just landed in a paradrop assault, or if it's a parachute landing zone, that wouldn't be a lot of fun. So that the game for the US player becomes, where did Hapless randomly assign my stuff, and how do I fix this stupid problem, rather than any decision making on their part, and that's just a lot less interesting. So we don't have the LGOP problem. We are organized and ready to go at game start. Also part of the company, we have a weapons platoon. So we have the platoon HQ and another Jeep. Who are you? It's a good job I caught that, actually, come to think of it. You need to be over here. Yeah, ignore him. I know what I'm doing. This is the attached mortar section to a company. So we have a Jeep with some extra mortar ammunition in, and then 3 81mm mortars. They could have been 60 mils, but it's like hard to find a use for them. Or they're not going to be that effective. The 81s have the range and enough of the firepower, and they bring some smoke to the party, which is also important. So how useful these will be depends on your plans and how that's going to interact with the enemy's plans. Important to note that there are 4 Jeeps in total in a company. So you do have some options for getting a move on. The flip side is that the Jeeps only have 4 seats each, so you are kind of limited. You can maybe put a Dragon team in each one. You can put the mortar teams in each one, FO teams, stuff like that, if you want to grab some ground straight away. So that's the starting force. These guys start off in these deployment zones. Back here, these are the reinforcements, and these are going to come in at the 10-minute mark off the top of my head, so a third of the way in. And these are from the battalion headquarters company. So the idea is that these have, this A company is the company that's dropped on the airfield. The battalion task force has two other companies, Bravo and Charlie, and they've dropped off over here, and they're generally sorting their lives out while we do this little flashpoint. But there's also the headquarters company, which has some other elements. So we have the HQ company HQ, an attached taxi P team, because obviously they don't have enough forward observers. Then we have some elements from the scout platoon. So we have the HQ, which is around here somewhere. Yeah, the scout platoon HQ. Two scout teams, which are 4 guys in a jeep, and 2 dragon teams, which are all 2 guys in a jeep with a dragon. So we get another 2 dragons. And then we have half of the AT platoon. So again, platoon HQ, and then 3 tow jeeps. And you can dismount the tow if that's what you want to do. It's got a significant pack-up time of like 5 minutes for some reason. But if you desperately want it on the building, you can do that. Personally, I'll probably keep them in the jeeps, so you get that mobility. So they're turning up at the 10-minute mark, and then we have at the 15-minute mark, 2 of the Phantoms are coming online. They have the 20mm API cannons, or 20mm cannons with armor-piercing incendiary, and then they have some cluster bombs. Even with the taxi P, which I added in specifically to make this easier, it's still going to be quite difficult to get the F4s to deliver. You pretty much, it's still going to be 9 minutes or so on like a perfect call-in. Predicting where the enemy's going to be when they have this much open ground and mobility to deal with could be quite difficult. So the F4s are there. How useful they're going to be is questionable, which makes sense. Air power is just kind of swingy. If they come in for the US player, awesome. It's cinematic. It's very cool. And the US player should be rewarded for correctly predicting where the enemy's going to be in like 10 minutes. If they don't, they shouldn't be that much of a game changer. So that's the US side. Let me just check those reinforcements. So reinforcements 1, yeah, scouts and tows at 10 minutes, and the F4's at 15. Right. And now we're going to have a look at it from the red side. This is another byproduct of it being a scenario, which is both sides are known. That's obviously an advantage I have because I made the scenario. Part of the problem with QBs is that even though it is more interesting to have less stuff. I say less stuff. To not know what your opponent's bringing, and there's that element of figuring out what's going on to it. You can have those scenarios or those situations where you screwed up your force selection and you lost the game before it started, and that's not a lot of fun. So we are going to look at both sides here. Starting off the map, we have a BRDM unit. So this is a special recon platoon from a reconnaissance battalion. We have 6 BRDMs, which are these terrible little armored boxes with machine guns. And of course, I say terrible. It's got a Dushka and a coax. It can sit outside effective range of everything the Americans have here except Dragon and Tow, and shoot the snot out of them. So it's not to be underestimated in this. And there are... we got the HQ team in one of them, which is just one confused, lonely... I guess he's a lieutenant. I'm not up on my Soviet rank slides. We have three, I think. Yeah, three four-man teams, which are the default, and then we had two empty BRDMs, and they've just got scout teams, three-man scout teams in. Also, starting off, we have the Recon Company HQ, which is in a BRDM-1, which is just some kind of joke vehicle, and an attached FO in a truck. And these are starting off in these deployment zones. So we have here on the left, or the Soviet left, and the right with these buildings here. So, there's opportunity to put the FO up in a building so they can see out over the airfield, over the perimeter wall. Following up the BRDMs at the 5-minute mark, I believe, we have the other two platoons from this first recce company. These are in BTR 70s. So three squads in a HQ per platoon. The BTR 70, similar kind of vibe to the BRDM, it's just kind of longer. It's easy to lap at them, but it's a heavy machine gun that's small arms proof, and that's a problem when you don't have a lot of anti-tank weapons, as if you were some kind of, I don't know, light infantry company or something. So these are going to pop in on these roads. The trucks won't be there. They come up later on these little sub roads. So we're getting a pretty clear kind of pre-worked game plan for the Soviets to some extent, which is how the Soviets operated. So the BRDMs come in first, make contact, grab what ground they can, start gathering information. The BTRs turn up, and then you have a choice. You can follow up on the BRDMs or keep them back for a more decisive blow later, up to the player. Then at the 10-minute mark, I believe, we have, this is where the trucks come in, we've got a mortar battery. So 2 platoons of 3 120mm mortars popping in on the same roads. These guys have loads of ammunition. This is the battery HQ element, which has another FO. So there's a little bit of flexibility there. Like I say, these guys, 120mm mortars, plenty of HE, plenty of smoke, extra ammo in the trucks. They're going to be a key component of the Soviet attack force. Now, what gets interesting is the question of whether you just dump them out of the vehicles and set up straight away, because they do have a 1.5 minute setup time. And then you have, 6 mortars ready to go fairly soon, and you can direct them with the FOs, or to bring the trucks up, and you can kind of see from these breaches in the wall, you could theoretically set up a 120mm mortar here, or get up onto the slightly high ground on the far right. You could set it up and engage in direct fire, which is a little bit more responsive, but it's got its uses. It might be a good move, it might not be. It depends. Finally, as an added bonus, each mortar platoon has a Strela Sam team, or a guy with a Strela Sam in it, just as a little bit of insurance against those F4s. Always hard to work out how the air and counter-air battle works in combat mission. They might do nothing. They might be decisive. Probably not that much decisive, because the F4s are not intended to be that decisive themselves. They're like the cherry on top, not the whole cake. Finally, at the 15-minute mark, we have a chunkier recon company coming in from the battalion. So we've got the battalion HQ, which is in a BRM-1, which is a kind of recce Recce BMP, or Recce BMP-1 rather, 3 T-72As, which is why last week we got a short showing how demonstrating what happens when a TOW on the other side shoots a T-72A. Then we have 2 3-vehicle platoons. Each one's got a BRM-1, 2 BMP-2s with the cannon, and then you have these little 5-man recon squads in the back of them. So the Soviet force, heavy on vehicles, heavy on armor, heavy on firepower. It's got the mobility. It doesn't necessarily have the time or manpower to go about clearing these chunks of airfield that the US may be infesting. So, interesting dynamic there. Thinking about avenues of approach. On the left, we've got a road straight through the perimeter. Nice metalled road here, goes straight to the Airbase South objective. Then we've got these hangars, all these subsidiary buildings and things. We can get fire onto the other objectives from this flank, or just keep punching and just be really awkward for the American player. There's quite a bit of cover. You could, in theory, sneak around on the beach. Probably going to take too long. And not really lead that far, but the Soviet players got the mobility. They can do that. If we go up the center, we've got the actual runway on the left, which is obviously flat. Or flat in these circumstances. I didn't realize until I started looking at runways that a lot of them actually aren't flat. Some of them are quite lumpy. Anyway, this big chunk of ground here, with the runway on the left, perimeter defense at the bottom and right, and then airbase north at the end. This is pretty lumpy and bumpy. There's a lot of micro terrain in here, some bushes every now and again. This may or may not be a good avenue of approach. Plenty of cover, but it's overlooked by these buildings at this end. And finally, on the right, we've got the highway. This is like the coastal highway that goes off to whatever's west of Bandar Abbas, and a bit of higher ground on the far right. So from here, you can kind of, well, you can sort of see into the airbase a little bit. There's access. You can always blow holes in the wall with the tanks and the BMPs and things. There's some gaps anyway. But you could come down here with some protection from the perimeter wall, or concealment from the perimeter wall, and then hook in and tackle airbase north, or just go around to airbase west on the side there. And that could pose some real problems for the US player. On the other hand, the US player does have high ground over here. We have this kind of stepped, shelved terrain. And if he puts the toes up on here, which he could do quite easily because they're in the jeeps, he could potentially close down this avenue of attack quite easily and start nobbling the high-value targets like the BMPs and the T-72s. There is a counter to that, which is that the... and this is another argument for using the mortars in a direct fire role. The tows, these are early tows, they can see through smoke with the thermal optics, but they can't control their missiles through smoke, so they won't fire through smoke even though they can spot targets. This is something to do with the IR thingy flare on the back of the missile, which it uses to do the wire-guided part. So if you are pushing that way, maybe having a couple of mortars on standby in the direct fire roll to dump smoke on this ridgeline up here to try and close down any enemy tows is probably a good move. So yeah, there's options for both sides here, but they also have their own problems. Let's just double check those reinforcements. Yeah, so 5 minutes the BTR 70 platoons, 10 minutes the mortar battery, 15 minutes the recon company. And I need to actually save that because I did make the changes. So yeah, that is the setup for the scenario. The way that you guys can get involved is you can play along. So I'm going to leave a link to the scenario at the in the description of this video. I'm also going to leave a link to a Dropbox, or tell you what, actually, we'll save that for later and have a smaller window. All you need to do to take part here is play through the scenario with somebody. There's no AI plans. So you can't really play this single player unless you play both sides. Take a screenshot of the end screen. And from there, I'm going to be able to... once you got the screenshot, hang on until we open the results window. That's going to be like 2 years ago with the Concrete Hellcat mini campaign, where there will be a Dropbox link for a file transfer. You just upload the image of the end screen to that. That goes into a folder that I get to look in, and from there I can see we can start making a tally of total casualties, total vehicle losses, and who's sitting on which objectives at the end and which are contested. And we can amalgamate all these results, see if there's anything interesting, and see who comes out on top, the Americans or the Soviets. So that's the introduction to the scenario. Like I say, I will make that available in the description down below and open the results window later on. And with that, I can get on to the first turn. Okay, we're back with the Americans for the Adopt a Pixeltruppen part of this show. So, we had a lot of names submitted this year. Last year, we had so many, I split them. So we played a mirror match and had names for both sides, essentially, and doubled the number of names that got included because multiple hundreds of names do not translate well into small scenarios or company plus size scenarios levels of units. That's a terrible sentence. Can't you tell that I'm full of cold and my mind's not really there? So this year, the plan was originally to do the same thing. But I also thought that there were so many names. It starts to get very complicated tracking everything and sorting everything out on the admin end for me. So it would be easier to concentrate on one side. So this is the playthrough we're doing for the turn by turn as the Americans against Luca, who's going to be playing as the Soviets. So I've got managed to cram, I think it came to 181 names in, something like that. And the way we've done that is by naming all the Pixeltruppen. So not just the squad leaders, but every single soldier has been adopted. And the F4s. And the way I'm keeping track of this is I have the greatest weapon known to man, a clipboard with names on it. And I'm just going to I've got a red pen here, and I'm just going to cross people off as they die. This could get a little complicated. The main reason why is it's very easy to track if, say, a squad leader has died because he's the leader. It says on his little thing down here, and you know he's when he dies, that name is going to change. Keeping track of like the individual soldiers in a squad or a team, unless they're specialists, like we have an anti-tank specialist here, and we have an assistant team leader, they have the little things under their names. Without that, it is basically kind of impossible to tell, especially as the battle goes on and casualties take place and things mount up. And you know, if one of these guys is a casualty and he gets buddy aided, he just disappears from this roster. So say if it's this guy, he disappears, and then I have to keep track of, you know, which one's gone and which one has moved into which position, and that's too complicated. So if you're not a squad leader or a specialist, what's going to happen is the first name in the list I have for the squad is going to be the first casualty, second name, second casualty, all the way down to the bottom, basically. Which isn't as good as having the named Pixeltruppen or named specifically, but it's like about 1,000,000 times more trackable. So I've got my clipboard, and we can start going through everybody. So starting off, A Company headquarters, we've got DC in the captain's role. That's a captain, isn't it? Two bars. There's a lot of Americans screaming at me in the comments now. That's pretty traditional, really. And with him in the truck there, we have Eldar 1944. He's the XO. So this guy. And the RTO is Jack Hoffman. And the driver of that particular mule, the M151A2, the Jeep, is Raw. That's the name. Everybody, incidentally, is veteran on both sides. I should have pointed that out when I went through the forces. So, you know, not just regulars. That's just to spice things up a little bit. Then over here with the fire support team, that's led by Frame. The second FO in the team is RF 8640. The RTO is Jim Hull, and the guy tagging along for security and to carry all the batteries, I guess, is Keller. So that's the FO team. Moving on to 1st Platoon. This is the Fight Club platoon. There were a few names from Fight Club, either people who have signed up in one way or another, or who helped me out with some of the background and some of the other stuff. So 1st Platoon is the Fight Club platoon. That's led by Wolfson. His XO is Tiger Bunny 68, and his RTO is Gestud. There's always names that I'm just going to fail to pronounce, so you're just going to have to forgive me. The FO team is Barend, and his the FO for the platoon is Barend, and his RTO is Graham Overcash. The 1st MG team is led by Benjamin Headman. That's him there with the MG. He's backed up by Kong and Unkillable, which, yeah, sounds like a challenge to me. The 2nd MG is Jordan C001. He's the actual gunner, and he's backed up by Tiger Brown and Guava. Moving on to the 1st Squad 1st Platoon, or Squad 1-1. That's led by Johanski. And also in there we have, the team leader is Flying Scoots. Where's he? He's over there. And then the rest of the squad is made up by Rusty Spitfires, John Wack. I can't remember if that's a typo from me or if that is a actually what was written. Smithy Nephew, Sidewinder Nor, Kona, Chamois Blanc, Bad Company, Duke of Dopamine, and Admiral Katzenzungen, who is not only in the wrong service but in the wrong medium currently. Squad 2 is led by Limbo 365. The team leader is Ventura. And then we have Keeling Derogi, Circle 8810, Droid 987, Son of Dumb, Horus Heresy, Npickle, Grug, Staff Sergeant Noob, and Grimlock. And finally, Squad 1-3 is led by Attorney at War. The team leader is Skinny Bob. The anti-tank is Crazy Penguin. And then we have Ollie G, Muximus, there's not an A in there, Hyphin, Voak, Spasmaticus, Sato Tatsuhiro, Commodore 2 Bad Jim, again, wrong medium, wrong service, and McGrew. And second platoon, which is the one on the right here. This is the platoon where all the people who had a preference for the Soviet side went. So this is the platoon to keep an eye on, basically. May or may not be loyal. Slightly too invested in redistributing assets and things. So this is led by Nick Timofeyevich. And his EXO is Split S, and his RTO is Kilgore. And we got the FO team. That's the FO there is Itchy Scoop, and his RTO is Troll Gaming. MG, the first MG team is led by Saddam. Somewhat ironically, a lot further into Iran than another famous Saddam got. And he's backed up by Gart and PM Kyles. The second MG team is the gunner is Grisha, and he's backed up by Centurion and DeWeese. The first squad is led by Sergeant Ben Kerry. The team leader is Snick's Truth. And then the Pixeltruppen in there are Terry, definitely not a spy, which is why he's in this platoon, Bly, Undermanas, Daniel Lewis, which is Daniel Lewis but spelt wrong, Assassin Agent El Jefe, Patrick, Zeke Vales, and Comrade Max. Again, Comrade, that's why he's in this squad. Squad 2-2 is led by Sergeant Bagel. The team leader is Dr. Fussapulli. And then we have Moz Arella, Palmer, Cowtonarch, Mr. Praetor, Akroon, Vorlightel. There's always something I can't pronounce. Oxide does his best. Second Convex, and Romitas. And then finally, Squad 2-3 is led by Mordschlag. The team leader is Vortrekker. The anti-tank is Jake Snipers. And then we have Private Buntle, Commissar Riyad. Again, that's why he's in this platoon. Spencer McKin, Modello McKendrick, Don't Panic, Penner, Tex Tanker, and Kelvin P. Third platoon is on a different sheet of paper. Hang on. There we go. Is led by Mikolas. His EXO is Mosh, and his RTO is Mr. Bass Games. FO is Begrudging, and his RTO is Trellis 4464. I never know if the numbers are something YouTube adds or if people are like, I want numbers in my name. The first MG is Sergeant Zaleski, and he's backed up by Avtomat and Harry Potter. The second MG is Colby Simpson, with Dip and Cricket Blue carting around all his ammunition. First squad is led by Bubster52. The team leader is McGruff. And then we have Danger Goose, Blackbird, Tom Lohan, Dob 7343, Siska Rover, Pendejos, that guy named Dan, JN Doe, and Dirty Burke. Second squad is led by Railgun Lovebites. The team leader is Taco Maru. And then we have Balls Fears Nothing. He will do by the end of this. Taras Martiuk, Cavebird, Trooper Wanders, Vort Steve, James Fox, Frosty Robot, Sakevsky, and Jared Ramirez. And I pressed the wrong button. There we go. Finally, Squad 3-3 is led by Duck. The team leader is Wily Zeta. The anti-tank is 3 badges in a trench coat. And then we have Victorious Omen, Koenig, Swedish M90 Camouflage, Up There Kazali, Scruggs, Murtog, Casca, and Spess. So that's the rifle platoons, who are going to be absorbing most of the casualties. Potentially because, or potentially on purpose. Fourth platoon, the weapons platoon, is led by Middle Eastern Magician. His XO is Richard Hutchinson and his RTO is Urban, and they're driven around in their mule by Spooker. The Mortar HQ team is commanded by, which is also a mortar team, I should add, is commanded by FNG, and his mortar operator is Sprogue, and the guy with the unfortunate task of carrying all the heavy stuff is Carrington. The second mortar team, or the first team, this just gets confusing, doesn't it? Is led by Chodester, and he's backed up by Gunnery 2 and Donger. Then we have the third mortar, which is commanded by Smile. The operator's Murphy, and then Mark Charlton is chucking the bombs down the tube. Finally, we get the last mule, which is being driven around by Dougie Burns. The reinforcements, which are going to be popping in 10 minutes, they're from the headquarters company, which is... Oh, this is also on another page, hang on. I don't really have enough space to just spread these out so I can just see them. The HQ team is, or the headquarters company HQ, you know, straight from the Department of Redundancy Department, is commanded by Georgie Porgy. His XO is Spudman and his RTO is Little, and they're being driven around in a Jeep by Jackal 2100. Oh yeah, the taxi P team that goes with them is the Observer is Poxyquattle, and his RTO is Lou Cummings, and they're being driven around by Ace Hardcastle. Moving on to the Scouts. Yeah, there we go. The Scout platoon is commanded by IDU Navy, and his XO is a Brambo, and his RTO is Jacob Parsley. Nobody drives them around, they've got their own Jeep. The first Scout team is led by Ray L. And then the 3 soldiers inside, or 3 soldiers in the Jeep with him are Car Croy, Eater, and Sergeant Banger. The second Scout team, I don't know why I put these in such a stupid order, going backwards and forwards, is led by Master Stew. Also in there with him are Tom Steele, Corporal Kaken, and BP Stalker. The Dragons, the first Dragon team is led by Chap, and the guy with the actual launcher is Portalgate. And the other one is led by Costello, and the guy in there with him actually doing the missile work is Mallory. Moving on to the anti-tank platoon with the toes, their HQ team is led by Quetz. His RTO is Pickles, and they're being driven around by a Brenner. Where are all my buttons? The first tow vehicle is being driven around, or is commanded by Sotomo. And also in there we have Trooper Dave and Chaplain. The second tow vehicle is commanded by Andrew Offen, and he's backed up by Unfortunate Ivan and Japs. And then the third one is under the command of Jimmy Changa. And in there, in the Jeep with him, he's got Rip Van Winkle and Conscript Yarrick, who is not only in the wrong war, but in the wrong universe. And is unlikely to survive having his arm ripped off. Yeah, then we have the two F4s. So I have literally no way of telling these apart, apart from one is on the left and one is on the right. Hopefully that's not going to change. It should stay the same, right? We'll see. So the left-hand one, the first one is Black Jackal. And the one on the right is Atlas Actual, who is upgraded from being an infantryman. So yeah, a few familiar names in there. People who are keeping the tradition of getting picked going. Yeah, so a lot more bodies than last year. It's going to be a lot of fun crossing all these names out, as it all goes horribly, 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 horribly wrong. And with that done, let's get on to the plan, TM. So here we are. This is the Blues deployment in the actual game. So we're not in the editor anymore. We've got A Company, who just landed on the airfield, and we know the enemy is pushing in from the east, and we've got these three objectives. So we've got some tactical choices to make here. Choice number one. Which objectives do we want to hold on to? So Airbase West and Airbase North are pretty close together. They're deeper into the map than Airbase South. So we've got a bit of depth to work with. We're going to have early warning. Like I say, they're mutually supporting, so you know, troops in one are, well, probably maybe not in range of the others, if we're thinking about small arms, weapons, and things. But definitely in position to support one another or move forces between them. On the left, they're relatively secure. I say relatively secure. We've got this open area on either side of the perimeter wall, which is nice and open, nice big killing field. Great long-range engagement corridor down the highway. On the right, we've got the runway, which is also nice and open. And then to the front, we have this kind of broken, bumpy terrain, which doesn't really have any significant defensive advantages to it. Especially if we need, because we need to take into account the Soviet mobility here. So, for example, if we decided, okay, we're going to set up a load of little micro reverse slope positions out here in between these two objectives and block this avenue of approach directly onto Airbase North, we'd be a bit screwed if the Soviets punch down the highway and just go past them, or punch down the runway and take, maybe a few losses from very long range, lucky M72s or some Dragon, and then just punch into the objective. So I don't want to be out in the open. I am kind of tethered to the objectives because of the mobility disparity. And that makes airbase south, a bit of an issue. So it's kind of out here on its own. Yes, it has some open ground around it, which can be useful, but it's off on a flank. So enemy forces pushing down the highway or down the runway are even less are even harder to deal with. A force here could easily be bypassed, even though it's on an objective. And a large force here, enough to totally clear it out and contest it against that first wave, maybe first, second waves of Soviet recon troops, it is going to be so big it's going to leave the other two objectives exposed. And a smaller force is really going to struggle with it because it's got to go door to door and check all these buildings under BRDM fire, a BTR 70 fire. So yeah, that's kind of a tough one. It's not necessarily a good idea to send forces down here, but at the same time, if this is totally open, the Soviets have a route straight down my right flank. If they can get onto, say, this road here or this area here, and they can just punch all the way down here. So this is, if they do that early, they're going to be, dealing. The only problem they're going to have is the dragons. I'm going to be reluctant to use up the ammunition because I want to save them for the armored recon company that's coming up behind them, the tanks and the BMPs. And they're well beyond range of like the M72s and things like that. So leaving this flank totally open is a problem. And some kind of a couple of BTR platoons that have managed to get all the way up here around the back, they would complicate things immensely. Not to mention the fact that if that becomes a proven route, the enemy could then follow up with the armor, and come at these objectives from a direction I'm not necessarily going to be able to deal with. So actually, even though it might be a tactical issue, Airbase South is definitely still an objective that I could do with dealing with. The second question is a weapon system question. We kind of already touched on it, which is the big deal. Like, well, how are these engagements going to pan out? The enemy is in vehicles coming to us. We basically have two anti-tank weapons. The Dragon, which has a range of 1,000 meters, and the M72 Laws, which are inaccurate and have a maximum effective range of 200 meters, and good luck if you actually ever hit anything. There's a big difference between a 1,000 meter range and a 200 meter range. So we really need to consider that the Dragons are the most effective weapon we've got. We've only got 3 of them to start with, and they're down in the rifle platoons. So what's this? This is 3rd Squad, 2nd Platoon. Where's my list? Yeah, so this is Jake Snipers. He's got the Javelin in this squad, in this platoon. In fact, that's the critical asset. So I want to be thinking about where am I going to put them, where do I want to commit them, what targets do I want to prioritize? Because it's all well and good schwacking all the BRDMs that turn up, the 6 of them, but if that uses up 6 of the 9 Dragon missiles and gives the Dragon's positions away, let's not forget that, then there's only 3 missiles left in the first batch of forces to deal with 6 more BTR 70s that are coming, and then 3 tanks and 10 BMPs. 7 BMPs. Yeah, 7. That's not good. Don't like that. So, there's difficult decisions. One thing I need to decide to do is whether I want to keep the dragons, A Company's dragons embedded, keep them with the platoons as the platoon anti-tank weapon, or split them off and make a little anti-tank section of my own. So what we could do is, alright, this is a third squad, this is Attorney's squad, and he's got Crazy Penguin on the dragon. If we form an anti-tank team, that's 4 bodies, and if we grab a jeep, we can wang them in a jeep, and then we've got an anti-tank QRF, and we can send them out where we need them. That might be a good move. On the other hand, it might be less relevant in some, depending on what the enemy decides to do. You do get a bit of flexibility, but you might not be in a position to deal with those early BRDMs and BTR-70s. And the platoons without that support might have serious problems. And if they're held back in reserve, AT assets might not actually be able to get into position in time. There's also the added issue that the jeeps are obviously a bit harder to hide than 4 guys who are prone in this kind of terrain. And a jeep getting sprayed with 14.5 mil fire from a BRDM or a BTR-70 is going to stop being a jeep and start being a pile of scrap with a load of leaky humans in. So, yeah, decisions. I think what we're going to do is we're going to send 1 platoon off to Airbase South, because that really needs to have the I need to lock down that avenue of approach, even if I'm not locking it down that much, to have an obstacle for the enemy there is going to be really important. And then send the other 2 platoons, well, 1 in Airbase North, that's fairly obvious, and have the other one lurking at the close side, ready to go into Airbase West or Airbase North as necessary. We can stack the mortars in Airbase West itself with the HQ elements, and then when the scouts and the AT arrive, we should have a good appreciation of what's going on, and we can send them where they're needed. That's the plan. Not that confident about it. So, as originally deployed, it's the very suspicious 2nd platoon of people who wanted to be on the Soviet side, who are standing by to go to Airbase South. I think it's going to be good for them to take their dragon with them. That just makes sense. So, to think about, I mean, the other thing here is that they have to get to Airbase South, and it is 500 meters away. And that's not an amazing distance to be running, especially when there is enemy running, coming in down here in BRDMs. I should say potentially coming down here in BRDMs. So if we've got a race for this objective, that could be a race that's actually quite difficult to win. But we can give it a go. So let's get Mordschlag's squad with the dragon you guys just have to run like the clappers. Down here, we've got this berm. I think these are like ammo. Well, they're probably not ammo shelters because they're so close to the actual hangars. But you know what I mean. So they're just going to leg it. They're just going to sprint 500 meters. They're probably going to be dead by the end of it. But they gotta make the run. Let's get the FOs. That's Itchy Scoop. You're also going to go. There's not really much point trying to provide security, if that makes sense. This is Nick Timofeyevich. Because they don't have weapon systems that can actually deal with the BRDMs apart from the Dragon. And I think at least for the first turn, they shouldn't be in range. This is Saddam. So I'm willing to just line up on the edge of this rally area and leg it and take a chance on that. That's Grisha, who's also making the run. This is Sergeant Bagel's squad. We basically want to get behind the hangars. And then over here we have Sergeant Ben Kerry's squad. These guys have got... It's a long way to run for 500 meters at a sprint, carrying all of this crap. They are going to be vulnerable. So what I'm going to do is we're going to set the mortar platoon up, or the mortar section, and they're going to put some smoke down. So that's Smiles' team, Chodesta's team, and FNG's team. And we're just going to dump all their smoke out here. Oh, what's the... Gentle from the west. So basically it's going to go towards the enemy. That'll do, I guess. The smoke will blow towards the enemy. And it's gentle, which is good enough. So we just want to... pop some smoke down. That should do, I think.
Request fire mission, over. Roger. Fire mission request.
So that's...
Roger.
Yeah, if we look from, say, this road, which is a very likely avenue of approach. Yeah, so he's got to go up to this berm, and then he's going to have the smoke. There's maybe a little bit of a gap there, but nothing too concerning. And this area here, where they won't be covered by smoke that much, well, that's not going to be a problem because the smoke probably... it's going to take at least 30 seconds before they starts firing the smoke rounds off. And they should be across there by then. I'm also making this out to be really risky. It depends a lot on what the enemy does. And I should, because I don't have a script for this, I'm making this up as I go along, which explains why it's so disorganized. My opponent hit this time is Luca from the unofficial CM Discord. So we played his Strike at Karkand map earlier in the year, or back in 2024, I guess. So I expect him to be on the ball. He's played this before in a playtest as the Soviets, so he has an idea of what's going on. Which seems only fair, seeing as though, you know, I designed the scenario and made the map. So I have a huge advantage on that part. So, yeah. I'm not sure what he's going to do. But I definitely feel like I need a little bit of bum rush protection here. Yeah, so that's the second platoon. Nick Timofeyevich's platoon. we'll see how they do. Their aim here is basically to infest this corner, cover off this flank, and either clear it and seize the objective, in which case they can use the dragon to cover off their left, or if they engage enemy forces there, fix them in place, stop them moving out anywhere else, stack some bodies, etc., etc. And if they get crushed, then, well, hopefully they're going to go down fighting. And whatever happens, they should hopefully present a bit of an obstacle. And hopefully I can encourage Luca to not use that avenue of attack by saying, look, there's something in the way, you're on a time limit, it's not worth it, go somewhere else. So if I can drag him into a fight over here with just one platoon, then awesome, because those are assets that aren't going somewhere else, and it's not really worth it. It's only one of the objectives. So yeah, that second platoon with the mortars in support. We also... I'll get rid of your objective. That was from something else. So yeah, this is third platoon. You guys, I guess, are going off to Airbase North. So this is Nicholas. These guys don't need to sprint in quite such a hardcore manner. And we're just going to, I think, just get into the objective and then start thinking about things. This is begrudging. So a natural kind of place to start putting units here, especially like the FOs and the Dragon team, is going to be in these front buildings. So we've got, a nice 3-story building, great big field of fire, which is exactly why I don't really want to put anybody in there, because Luke is going to look at that and be like, delete. This is Sergeant Zaleski. That's a real concern, which is when you see terrain or buildings that are offer good observation and fire. I'm still going to put somebody up here because I still need the eyes out, but it's got to be someone relatively expendable. And I hate to say, Sergeant Zaleski, this one is Colby Simpson. I hate to say that the M60s are not an asset I particularly feel is going to be that decisive in this one. I'm going to get the rifle squads. This is Bubs the 52. I'm basically just getting into this area here, and then we'll fine-tune the defense later. This is Railgun Love Bites. And finally, Duck. With, let me check the spreadsheet, with the Dragon, she's been carted around by 3 badgers in a trench coat with little legs. We're just going to pause them for 10 seconds at the start to get a bit of dispersion, because I don't want to clump up too much. Right, so they're going into Objective North. And then over here we have first platoon. Actually, I might split off 3 badges in a trench coat. And have him report to the report over here to get into another one of these jeeps. That way I've got a little bit, a 2 jeep little mobile reserve, mobile anti-tank reserve rather. So yeah, let's find somebody who doesn't need to walk anywhere. DC, congratulations, the battalion or company HQ, and your driver Raw, who actually we should probably yeah, I'm thinking about there's a law in there, but it's probably going to be smarter not to give it to Raw, who's the driver, but to actually give it to the ATT. Actually, breaking off the AT team might be an issue because that leaves that entire bit there with just one law. Huh. I'm sure that won't come back to bite me. So there's our little anti-tank reserve. We'll stick that to one side for now. And you guys can hang around there. Attorney's squad, or attorney's truncated squad, you're just going to have to run up, I guess. So another potential thing, something I've done in testing, is punching one of the BRDM groups down here and then bringing it up to the gate on the left, and that way you can cover down here and stop, or at least be a massive pain for any Americans trying to cross this road and get into airbase north from over here. So that's something I kind of want to deal with to some extent. Let's get Limbo somewhere where he's going to be able to stick the boot in. Yeah, we've got a bit of dead ground here. We can move up. And try and get into a position. It's also possible to make a grab for the objective from that route. And, you know, if the enemy does get dug in, suddenly the American player is fighting just to gain a presence right from the very beginning, and that's going to involve casualties and all kinds of problems that you just don't need right at the start of the game. And you know, it soaks up attention and effort and inflicts attrition that the Soviet player can take advantage of later. We don't want that. So then Johanski's squad, you guys can just go up the middle. So the plan is to kind of keep first platoon, the Fight Club platoon, in this kind of area so they can flip back between these two objectives as necessary. So Jordan C with this M60, let's get you onto that roof because I want to be able to see that gateway and maybe machine gun some people if they try to go through it with mindless optimism, I guess. And then we'll get Benjamin Hedman down this way with that squad. Barend, the FO. Let's get you in one of those buildings there. So that's a less obvious observation post than some of the other ones. Not an objective. Not as tall, but there's still a pretty good view. And we can always move him later as well, obviously. And then finally, Wolfson, who's doing the platoon commanding for this one. I'm just going to get you up there behind that berm. Yeah, that should do. Right, the mortars are doing their thing. Right, the actual fire support team. So we've got 2 pairs of binoculars, we've got 2 observers, radio man. This is a great little unit to send off to an OP on its own. So you are going up on that hill. You want to get up on that high ground. That is Frame's FO team. So we're just going to go up here as fast as we can. This horrifying, barren wilderness. And plonk ourselves down here, where we're going to be able to see everything. How useful that will be, I'm not too sure about. At the moment, they only have the mortars to direct. They don't really... The mortars... Oh, hang on. No. Don't want to use that vehicle because that has loads of mortar ammunition in it. So, Dougie Burns, you're back on driving duty. Middle Eastern Magician, the mortar section HQ, and Spucker, you're going to have to dismount. You guys can definitely grab that lore though, and we'll use that Jeep because it's not full of ammunition that I definitely, if I'm not going to need, definitely intend to use. This is a kind of an open question how effective 81mm mortars are going to be in these circumstances. Let's get the Jeep up there like that. They could be if the enemy is manages to dismount, but we'll see. So the plan with these guys is, oh, we might as well put Spucker in with Dougie Burns there. The plan with these guys is to just slot them in here. So once they fire that smoke mission to begin with, the mortar's job is to leg it over here and set up in this objective. So we've just got a bit more control, a bit more ground control over here. Where are we going to set up? This will probably do behind this building. I don't... Yeah, a bit more into depth. So we're going to have some elements over here. I think this is where we're going to put the HQ elements, and the other bits we're going to put over here. So, yeah, just right there is fine. So we should also move the mortars so that they have less to run, not as far to run. And we'll get Middle Eastern Magician. Over there onto that roof where he can sort of see a bit and direct fire if necessary, but he's also should be within command range. So we've got our little anti-tank subunit here, which is, oh, I'm never going to remember these names, that's why I wrote them down. Crazy Penguin and three badgers, sorry, in a trench coat. I guess it's the animal division. I'm just going to stick them on this road. That way we've got a road we can use to get around, essentially. Okay, that leaves DC and... was that Spucker? No, that's Raw. Sorry, Spucker. Oh, sorry, Raw, rather. You're just going to sit in that building and do HQ things with a little bit of extra security from Raw there, who can loot all the... Who knows what you would find in an Iranian airbase in 1980 before the Islamic Revolution really changes things up. Right, so that's the plan. Everybody's going to die. Always get that feeling before we push the red button, but basically we're going to hold on to these, try and close down Airbase South. The first few turns we're going to be getting into position and trying to get a handle on what Luca's going to be doing with that first initial BRDM deployment, and trying to see if we can figure out his plan based on that. So yeah, going to be good fun. Let's push this button and we'll see what we get.